Welcome to the Nevada State Archives May Day 2021 presentation, Basic Emergency Preparedness Planning for Libraries, Archives, and Record Centers. Started by the Society of American Archivists and Heritage Preservation, May Day is an annual reminder to think about emergency plans. This video will give an overview on how to create or update an emergency plan. While not an in-depth training, we will suggest first steps and provide links to information on more detailed resources. Unexpected emergencies can happen anywhere at any time. In February 2021, a severe winter storm affected many parts of the United States. This storm caused an unusual disaster for Texas. The power grid failed in many areas. The temperature inside some buildings dropped so low that icicles formed off lights and ceiling fans. The Texas Collections Emergency Resource Alliance posted the following on their blog. As dangerous winter weather continues to plague Texas, the American Red Cross urges everyone to stay safe and stay at home if possible. When you are able to return to work, you may be confronted with a variety of collection emergencies. To prepare, we suggest studying the National Heritage Responders tip sheets before you return. The Texas Collections Emergency Resource Alliance blog also included links to the two resources shown here from the American Red Cross and National Heritage Responders. One of the main points stressed on the blog was that personnel stay home and stay safe until given the all-clear to return to their facilities. Human safety is of the utmost importance during emergency situations. Do not enter an affected facility until it has been determined safe. This view is looking north along Carson Street in Carson City, Nevada. On the block just out of the frame to the right stand the Nevada State buildings, the Capitol, the Legislature, the Supreme Court, and the Nevada State Library and Archives. This part of Carson City is one of the lowest points in Eagle Valley, and the water table here can be very high. The Nevada State Record Center is located in the basement of the NSLA building, and pumps are necessary to prevent water from encroaching on the records stored in the facility. A backup generator is needed to keep the pumps working during a power loss like the one that happened in the winter of 1996. Water damage can be a problem no matter what the emergency. Fire sprinklers and firefighter hoses, ruptured pipes, roof leaks or collapse due to storms. In emergency planning, determining the different ways water can get to your collections is important. Here you see a roof leak in the Nevada State Library that happened over a long weekend. As shown, the leak damaged the ceiling tiles and carpet. Plus, water seeped into map cases located in this area. While not a major disaster, the building needed repairs and maps were spread out to dry. None of the maps were rare, so they could be replaced if necessary. Nevada is also prone to earthquakes and wildfires. These can lead to structural issues that may cause water, fire, or smoke damage. How would this type of disaster affect your facility? If located in a historic structure, has the building been retrofit to modern earthquake standards? Are you surrounded by the type of vegetation that encourages the spread of wildfires? Taking all these factors into account is important in the creation of an emergency plan. California often faces major earthquakes, but their infrastructure still could not withstand a 6.9 shake. The right-hand image shows a Stanford University library after the 1989 Loma Prieta earthquake. An article, linked here, discusses changes made at Stanford after the disaster. While Nevada doesn't often have quakes that strong, a 2008 Temblor near Wells registered at a 6.0. Using lessons learned by others, such as Stanford, can help prepare for this type of event. The emergency planning cycle is a never-ending one. Of course, not every emergency can be foreseen, but creating a plan that covers the most likely situations is a good start. Debriefings should be held after each emergency, no matter how small, in order to keep the plan up to date. The Council of State Archivists and the Polygon Group have spelled out the 4 R's of the emergency management cycle on a handy one-sheet. The document can be found at the URL shown on the bottom of this slide. The first of the 4 R's stands for risk. Risk assessment deals with examining the factors that might lead to problems, from facilities location and collection storage to how much money is available to perform upgrades addressing potential problems. Readiness means not only planning, but also practicing emergency response. Key staff members should be identified, assigned response roles, and trained. Readiness also means identifying valuable and fragile collections items so they may be removed from harm's way whenever possible. One way to do this is to store the items in a secure area near an exit, or to mark containers with colored or glow-in-the-dark ink or tape so they can easily be found after a power outage. Protecting staff is a vital part of response. No staff member should be allowed to enter a damaged facility until it has been deemed safe. Once the all clear has been given, staff may then assess damage and proceed to the next phase of the cycle. Emergency plans should be easily accessible to the response team. The immediate emergency is under control. Now what? Next steps should be laid out in the emergency plan. The recovery phase may take anywhere from a few hours to many years depending on the type of disaster and extent of damage. This phase may be considered complete when operations are as close to normal as possible. Not everything may be back to pre-disaster status, but collections items and information should be accessible with the worst of the damage handled. Are emergencies and disasters the same thing? The terms are often used interchangeably. However, an emergency may not always mean disaster. An emergency can be something as small as a minor leak above a storage area. If the leak isn't addressed, or the roof fails, without protecting or moving collections, the situation could become disastrous. Not all emergencies or disasters are natural. Man-made disasters may relate to building construction or landscaping changes. Some situations may be specific to repositories in certain locations. For example, the Nevada State Archives is on the same block as the Nevada State Capitol, so large-scale protests could cause damage to both. An example of a human-caused disaster is the 1973 fire at the National Archives Personnel Records Center in St. Louis, Missouri. While the true cause has never been determined due to the intensity of the blaze, investigators think either a cigarette or bad wiring may be at fault. The loss of military service records dating from 1912 to 1964 is being felt to this day. No duplicates or microfilm copies of the full records exist. National Personnel Records Center staff continue trying to recreate as much as possible by reaching out to other repositories. Having faced a disaster like the Personnel Records Center fire makes the National Archives an excellent planning reference. Documents like the one shown here can be helpful. Other resources can be found on the National Archives website, www.archives.gov. The American Library Association website also links to disaster preparedness resources. These cover everything from school libraries to cultural heritage sites. NAGARA emergency preparedness resources relate to records management and electronic records. A membership may be necessary to access some of the information on their site. The Council of State Archivists Pocket Response Plan is used by many institutions. This customizable document can be printed double-sided on a single sheet of paper, which can then be folded and inserted into the Tyvek envelope shown here. The envelopes are available in packs of 10 from the COSA website. The prep is not meant to replace a full emergency plan, but is a good first step that can also complement a completed plan. One side of the plan includes a suggested list of contacts from first responders to agency staff. The number of contacts can be tailored to institutional needs. Creating a prep covers a very important aspect of emergency preparedness: communication. Proper communication is a major factor in successful response and recovery. The planning process should include the creation of a communication chain and a determination of who will be responsible for each response and recovery component. Skipping this important step may cause confusion and contribute to the loss of valuable items. One way to ensure proper communication is to use the Incident Command System, or ICS. Smaller institutions and loan arrangers might not need as formal a structure as the one shown here, but the ICS framework can include external response partners and recovery vendors as well as staff. A free online ICS 100 planning course is available on the FEMA website. Senior administration or board members, facilities maintenance, the chosen response team, and even local utility companies can be listed on the PREP. Including both daytime and after-hours contacts is important. The PREP can also be tailored to specific response staff. The more involved the staff member, the more contacts should be included. A volunteer may only need contacts for the person who will activate the response tree, whereas an administrator would need fiscal and facilities services, among others. The reverse of the PREP provides a response checklist. The Nevada State Archives uses the version shown here, geared toward archives and records facilities. Templates are also available for state and local government entities, as well as a more generic one that can be adapted to a variety of other institutions. The templates are available in English, Spanish, and Portuguese. Remember that the PREP does not replace a full emergency response plan. However, filling out the PREP can be a good first step, since a full plan can take 1 to 2 years to complete from scratch. With the contact tree and PREP in place, the next step of the emergency planning process is a risk assessment. This will help to identify, evaluate, and estimate the various levels of risk at a particular institution. Industry benchmarks and standards can determine how best to avert potential problems. Include everyone possible in the process: repository staff, board members or upper-level management, local emergency responders, and when possible, risk assessment professionals. All institutional staff members should be included because each will have a unique idea based upon their duties. Professional assessors can also provide a fresh perspective as well as mitigation suggestions based on industry standards. First responders should be given facility tours and be asked how they would approach an emergency. Do firefighters use chemical suppressant? Request that water be used instead, as it's less damaging to collections. For historic structures, the installation of a Knox box may prevent broken doors, windows, and walls. These decisions need to be made in advance, and agreements should be reached between the institution and the first responders. Here are a few online tools for risk assessment. During the planning process, it's important to look at a variety of resources to determine which components are most applicable to your situation. A systematic approach to risk assessment helps identify a variety of important details. Using a systematic approach may bring up things that otherwise wouldn't be noticed: old trees next to a building, missing fire extinguishers, proper shelving, and whether collections items are housed in sturdy boxes. A more detailed look at this systematic approach can be found at the URL shown here. Examine every nook and cranny during a building walkthrough. Talk to long-term facility staff about past problems. Gather as much information as possible and document which issues need to be addressed. Even if the budget isn't available to fix the roof right away, small changes like relocating valuable items to a drier spot can make a big difference. Document any and all problems, no matter how small. For example, the Nevada State Archives research room has a recurring leak. Water runs along a central column, pools on the floor, and seeps through to the offices below. Maintaining a history of when this has happened and what steps were taken can help determine preventative maintenance. Archive staff also needs to be mindful about placing items directly under this leak and should be extra vigilant during rainy and snowy weather. Another good early planning step is to either prepare or purchase basic response kits. The kits can be tailored to the size and needs of the institution. Creating one from scratch can be more cost-effective for a small repository, while larger facilities may prefer to purchase multiple pre-made kits like the ones shown here. Disaster kits should be inventoried on an annual basis to be sure items haven't gone missing or expired. Supplies that may not have seemed necessary at first may also be added. Keep the kits handy, but be sure staff knows not to remove anything except in case of an emergency. Know your collection. The most valuable and vulnerable items will often be the oldest and rarest, but don't forget records related to continuity of operations. You may need accession files documenting the provenance and history of collections. Physical copies may not be available if a facility is damaged. Can a copy be found in another office or cloud storage? Either option would be useful should the original be lost. Starting an emergency response plan from scratch can be a daunting task. Something like the Cal Preservation Library Disaster Plan can be a good starting point. Like the COSA Prep, a template like this should be tailored to each institution. Elements can be added or subtracted as necessary. Over the next few slides, we'll break down the table of contents shown here. Think about how the following sections from the template correspond to parts of the emergency management cycle. Disaster preparedness and prevention relates to both the first and second phases of the cycle. Ideally, response staff and contacts have been identified and a risk assessment is done. The assessment helps determine priorities, hazards, and insurance needs. The assessment may also suggest general housekeeping guidelines, like keeping aisles clear and valuable items off floors. Components of a building safety checklist may include emergency exit and meetup location maps and visitor evacuation guidelines. The response section will include details like who will initiate the contact tree, who will assess damage and set recovery priorities, and who will contact vendors and track items sent out for restoration. Disaster recovery details how collections will be restored. Will this be done by institutional staff or vendors? What types of repairs are staff authorized to handle? Where will items that can't be repaired right away be stored? The final section deals with the aftermath of response and recovery. This portion might include checklists to be used during staff debriefings. How well did the overall plan work? What sections need updating? What other mitigation options might be necessary to ensure the safety of collections? Does staff need more training and in what areas? Following up with these types of questions after an emergency is a vital part of the ongoing planning process. Final copies of the emergency plan can be kept in a 3-ring binder for easy updating. Binders can be located throughout the facility, the office, staff work areas, and storage areas, for example. Digital versions can be uploaded to the cloud for access during an emergency. Staff can also carry copies of the prep with their ID so they have those contacts on hand at all times.
Here are a few links for more information on emergency planning. Examining a variety of plans from different institutions can provide a broader perspective. Also, consider joining local or regional response networks to help pool resources. Contacting these potential emergency response partners in advance is important in helping to determine which may best suit your needs. They may also be able to provide you with contacts for other resources. We hope this brief overview of emergency planning has helped identify first steps in the process. Thank you for watching.